Welcome to the Labour Force. I'm Bongeni Mutwa. The stage is set for government to lock horns with public sector unions over wages. This as the new round of public sector wage negotiations is scheduled to begin next week, Monday. The new round of wage talks comes as government and public sector unions are still locked in a court battle over government's refusal to honour the last leg of the current 3-year agreement, which is due to come to an end at the end of this month. The unions were dealt a serious blow last year when the Labour Court ruled in favour of the government, saying the wage deal signed in 2018 is not binding because it was not approved by National Treasury and that honouring it would hamper government efforts to reduce public spending. Unions have since lodged an appeal at the Constitutional Court. Nevertheless, Trade Union Labour Federation FEDUSA is optimistic that the new round of talks will proceed smoothly.
We are very confident that on Monday, when we start with our negotiations, the employer will bring serious people who are coming in good so that we end this, wage war. We want this wage war to end, and the only way this wage war can end is when the employer gives public servants what is due to them.
In his budget for this year, tabled in Parliament last month, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni announced a wage freeze for public servants over the next 3 years. But that has not stopped unions from tabling a 7% wage increase demand ahead of the start of the crucial negotiations next week.
Whatever he said, it doesn't concern us. Our concern is to ensure that our members who are working very, very hard, some of them are frontline workers, they need to be rewarded. So we don't know where they are going to get the money. If they are able to go to IMF or World Bank to get money for certain things and it end up being looted, then we expect them to go somewhere to source money to pay public servants.
The Minister of Public Service Administration, Senzo Mchunu, has already ruled out government borrowing money to fund wage increases for public servants, whom he says are fortunate to be employed during a time of national crisis. Bongeni Mutwa, SABC News, Johannesburg. Well, for now, I'm joined by Teacher Union SADTU's head of Secretariat, Mr. Xolani Fakude. Good afternoon, Mr. Fakude.
First, let me greet you, let me greet the viewers as well.
Well, we just heard now your colleagues from FEDUSA sounding optimistic ahead of the start of the talks. Are you equally optimistic as COSATU public sector unions?
Well, firstly, Mbongeni, as I said, that let me really once again greet you on behalf of the South African Democratic Teachers Union. I think, Mbongeni, what we need to appreciate is that this particular round of negotiations is taking place against a background whereby we see public servants being frontline workers in the battle against a pandemic which neither of us would have seen before. But then secondly, and quite important, is that these negotiations are taking place against a background whereby there is still a stalemate around the non-implementation of the rest of the 2018 collective agreement 1. So you would understand, Mbongeni, that in our view as a union, that this seems that there is indeed a particular attack on collective bargaining. So whilst we are hopeful that this particular round of negotiations will bear the fruit that we want to see for our members, we are, however, cautious of the kind of even the sentiments that we've been receiving from the government. You would have heard, for instance, that the minister in the Treasury, who has gone to the extent actually of pronouncing some kind of a wage freeze in the public sector, even before wage negotiations start. So you would realize that there is that kind of toxicity that already exists. However, we are quite optimistic. We've got very firm demands that we've set on the ground, and we believe that we will see them through as a union.
Now, obviously, it's clear what's going to happen on Monday. The government is going to come and say, we don't have money to give you any increase. In fact, not just for this year, but for the next 3 years. Borrowing is out of the question because the public debt is already too high at about 81% of GDP. So How will you respond to that?
Well, I can tell you, as a matter of fact, Bongen, that we are not going to accept that kind of an approach. It is our view as public servants that it would be utterly unfair to actually give us the burden as public servants of a struggling economy. And we are saying, Bongen, that if you can find money, if you can go indeed to other borrowing agencies, if you can indeed advance money towards state-owned entities, some of which, by the way, becomes mismanaged. If you were to look into the Aegis report on the level of corruption in this particular country, I can tell you for a fact that as public servants, as teachers in particular, as SADTU, we would never agree to that kind of an approach. However, we are willing to be engaged, and that is precisely why we are saying that whilst we are cautious in this particular round of negotiations, we remain optimistic, we remain hopeful that indeed collective bargaining will be respected.
Well, in closing, just quickly, yesterday we learned that NGOs, community-based organizations, including trade unions, including, of course, your sister union, NEHAW, have come out and called on Parliament to reject the budget, saying that the austerity measures that are contained in it are unconstitutional. As such, do you share the sentiment?
Well, what I can tell you is that our sister unions are not necessarily too far from what already we would have proposed as SADTU. We are working together in these particular negotiations. And of course, like we would have said earlier, that it even concerned us when the minister in the Treasury came and made particular pronouncements even before the negotiations would have started. You would appreciate, Mongeni, that we have made particular demands. And like I said, we're working together with our sister unions. And of course, those include, and I heard also in your insert as well, the CPI increase plus 4%, the single-term agreement that we are calling for, and of course, support. Those are some of the key priorities. Support to the children of public servants, especially in the higher education space. When you will see the crisis that we are sitting with right now in the public sector space, precisely because of the missing middle. And these are the children of the public servants. So we've made those particular demands. We believe that sense we will prevail in this particular instance. But I can tell you for a fact, Moen, that as SADTU, a worker-driven union, we really are prepared to go to the greatest extent to make sure that our demands are achieved.
Well, Mr. Fakude, it's a pleasure having you on the show, and we wish you and all the other unions luck as you begin the crucial wage talks with the government. Thank you very much. Well, that's where we leave it. Up next, the alternative investor with Nastasia Arendse. Stay with us.